Picture yourself at 3 in the morning. You're staring at the ceiling. Your mind won't shut off. It's running through every possible disaster that could happen tomorrow. Your car could break down. Your laptop could die. You could get laid off. Your kid might need emergency dental work. And with each scenario, your chest gets tighter because you know the truth. You have maybe $800 in your checking account. Maybe, if nothing else hits this month. This is cognitive tunneling, and it's literally making you dumber. I'm not being dramatic. Princeton researchers actually proved this. They took people and put them under financial stress. Then they gave them IQ tests. The stressed people scored significantly worse, not because they're less intelligent, but because their brains were running background processes, constant calculations. Can I afford this? What if that breaks? How do I survive until Friday? Your brain has limited processing power, and when you're broke, you're using most of it just trying to not drown. Which means you have less left over for everything else. Your job, your relationships, your future. You're operating at maybe 70% capacity, and you don't even realize it. But here's what nobody talks about. There's a specific number that turns this off, a dollar amount that flips your brain from survival mode to strategic mode. And it's not $1 million. It's not even 100,000. The number is $15,000. 15,000 sitting liquid in an account you could access tomorrow. That's it. That's the threshold between constantly anxious and actually able to think, and most people will never hit it. Not because they can't, but because they don't understand what's actually happening in their brain when they cross that line. Let me show you exactly what changes. Right now, if your car makes a weird noise, your body goes into threat response. Your heart rate spikes. Your stomach drops. Because you know this could be a disaster, you start catastrophizing immediately. What if it's the transmission? What if it costs $3,000? How do I even get to work without a car? Do I put it on a credit card and pay 20% interest for the next 2 years? Do I borrow from my parents and feel like a failure? The noise hasn't even been diagnosed yet, but you're already having a full stress response. You can't sleep that night. You're distracted at work the next day. You snap at your partner because you're anxious about something that hasn't even happened yet. Now let me show you the same scenario with $15,000 in the bank. Your car makes the same noise. You're annoyed. Sure, it's inconvenient. But your brain doesn't trigger the threat alarm because you know you can handle it. Whatever it costs, your emergency fund absorbs it. You take the car in. You pay for the repair. Your life continues. The actual outcome is identical. The repair costs the same, but the psychological experience is completely different. This is what I mean when I say $15,000 buys you mental peace. It's not about the money. It's about what the money does to your nervous system. And here's where it gets really interesting. Once you have that cushion, you start making better decisions everywhere. And I can prove this mathematically. Let's talk about your career. When you have zero savings, you're negotiating from total weakness, and your employer knows it. When they offer you a salary, you can't push back. You need the job. When they ask you to work unpaid overtime, you say yes. Because what choice do you have? You can't risk getting fired. You can't afford to be unemployed for even a month. But when you have $15,000, everything changes. You have walking away money. Let me tell you about someone I know. He got a job offer, $85,000. Decent salary. Better than what he was making. Most people would have taken it immediately. Maybe tried to negotiate an extra $1,000 just to feel like they tried. But he had $15,000 saved, so he countered at $95,000. Not 90, not 88. 95, a number that felt almost disrespectful. The company said no. They said 85 was final. They needed an answer by end of week. Here's where most people panic. They accept immediately. They're grateful they still have the offer. But he didn't panic, because he had options. He said thanks, but I'll keep looking. And he meant it. He was genuinely prepared to walk away. 2 weeks later, the company called back. They said they'd talked to leadership. They could do $92,000. He made $7,000 extra that year. That's a 46% return on his emergency fund, without investing a single dollar. Just by having the psychological safety to walk away, and that 7,000 compounds. Every future job negotiation starts from a higher base. Over a career, that one moment of having options could be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. This is what wealthy people mean when they talk about money making money. It's not some mystical thing. It's leverage. It's options. It's being able to say no. But here's the brutal truth. Most people never get there. And it's not because they can't save $15,000. It's because of something I call the valley of death. Let me show you what I mean. Say you're saving $500 a month, disciplined, consistent. At that rate, it takes you 30 months to hit $15,000, 2.5 years. That's a long time to delay gratification, especially when the progress feels glacially slow. Month 6, you've saved $3,000. Cool, except $3,000 doesn't change anything. You still can't quit your job. You still can't handle major emergencies. You still have the same anxiety, so there's no reward. Your brain isn't getting any dopamine for this sacrifice. Your friends are taking trips, buying new clothes, going to concerts. You're saying no to everything. For what? $3,000 that doesn't fundamentally change your financial reality. Month 12, you've got $6,000. Still not enough, still anxious, still trapped. Then something happens. A friend's destination wedding, a car repair, a sale on something you've wanted. And suddenly that $6,000 looks spendable, because $6,000 sitting in savings doesn't feel powerful enough to protect. But $6,000 spent on something gives you immediate gratification. Your brain gets the dopamine hit. You feel like you've rewarded yourself for all that sacrifice. And then you're back at zero, telling yourself you'll start again next month. But next month there's another expense, another reason to delay, and you never build the cushion. This is why the wealth gap keeps growing. Poor people experience the valley of death and give up. Wealthy people either inherited money and never experienced it, or they white-knuckled through it once and reaped the compounding benefits forever. The barrier to building wealth isn't intelligence. It's not work ethic. It's the ability to endure delayed gratification long enough to cross the threshold where the benefits become self-reinforcing. And most people simply can't do it. But here's the part that will blow your mind. Once you cross 15,000, everything gets easier, not just psychologically, mathematically. When you have 15,000, earning 4% in a high-yield savings account, that's $600 a year in passive income. Your money is now contributing $50 a month to its own growth. You're not just saving $500 anymore. You're saving $500 and your money is saving $50, $550 total. At 20,000, you're earning $800 annually. At 30,000, $1,200. Your savings start to snowball. And when you see your balance growing faster than you're contributing, something clicks in your brain. You start to understand that money can work for you. This is the mindset shift that separates people who build wealth from people who stay broke forever. Poor people think they need to work for money. Wealthy people know money works for them. But you can't internalize that lesson until you've experienced it, until you've watched your money multiply without you doing anything. And that doesn't happen until you cross the threshold. So how do you actually get there? How do you survive the valley of death? First, you have to reframe what you're saving for. You're not saving for emergencies. That's too abstract, too negative. You're saving for freedom. Every dollar in that account is buying you options. It's buying you the ability to negotiate, to walk away, to take risks. Frame it that way, and the sacrifice feels purposeful. Second, automate it. If you're manually moving money to savings every month, you'll fail, because every month you'll have a reason why this month is different. You need to set up automatic transfers the day after your paycheck hits. The money disappears before your brain can spend it. Third, attack your biggest expenses, not your smallest. Everyone focuses on cutting coffee, But that's noise. If you want to save $500 a month, you need to look at housing and transportation. Can you live with a roommate for 2 years? Can you drive an older car? These aren't sexy sacrifices. But they're the ones that actually move the needle. And here's the thing most people won't tell you. Most people won't do this. They'll read this and nod and then continue spending everything they make. Because optimizing major expenses requires uncomfortable lifestyle changes. It requires admitting to your friends you can't afford the trendy neighborhood. It requires driving a car that doesn't signal status. But the people who do make these sacrifices, they're the ones who end up wealthy. Not because they earned more, but because they created a gap between income and expenses. And that gap compounds. Let me show you what life looks like on the other side of $15,000. First, the anxiety disappears. Not completely. You don't stop caring about money. But the low-grade constant hum of stress that's been running in the background of your consciousness for years just turns off. You sleep better. You're more present. You stop checking your bank account compulsively before buying groceries. Second, you start taking better care of yourself. When you're in scarcity mode, you defer maintenance. You don't go to the dentist. You don't buy the good groceries. You don't invest in your health because you're prioritizing survival. But when you have a cushion, you can think preventatively. You fix small problems before they become catastrophic. And this saves you money long term. A cavity costs $200 to fill now, $3,000 for a root canal if you wait. Being broke is expensive. Having money makes everything cheaper. Third, you start seeing opportunities everywhere. When you're broke, every opportunity looks like a risk. What if it doesn't work out? What if you lose money? But when you have $15,000, you can take calculated risks. You can invest in learning. Start a side business. Experiment. And some of those experiments pay off massively. Let me tell you about someone who figured this out. She was making $45,000 a year. Not great. She lived in an expensive city. After rent and essentials, she wasn't left with much, but she decided to hit $15,000 no matter what. She moved in with a roommate, cut her rent from $1,500 to $800. That's $700 a month freed up. She drove a car her friends made fun of. She packed lunches. She canceled subscriptions. She automated $500 into a high-yield savings account. For the first year, it was brutal. She felt like she was missing out while everyone around her was living normally. Her roommate was annoying. Her commute was longer. She saw her friends' vacation photos and felt left behind. But she kept going. Month 18, $9,000 saved. Still not enough. Month 24, $12,000. Close. Month 28, she crossed $15,000, and everything shifted. First, she noticed the anxiety was gone. She didn't obsess over her bank balance anymore. When her car needed a $700 repair, she was annoyed, but not panicked. She paid it. Her emergency fund absorbed it. Second, her job performance improved. She realized she'd been operating at 70% capacity because so much mental energy was consumed by financial stress. Once that disappeared, she became sharper, more creative, more willing to take on challenging projects. 6 months later, she got promoted. Her salary jumped to $55,000. Third, she started seeing opportunities. A coworker mentioned a consulting gig, $3,000 for a weekend's work. Old her would have been too scared. What if it interfered with her day job? What if the client didn't pay? But with $15,000 in the bank, she could take the risk. She did the gig. It went well. The client referred others. Within a year, she was making an extra $10,000 annually from consulting. Now do the math. The promotion was worth $10,000 annually. The consulting was worth $10,000. That's $20,000 in increased income that directly resulted from having the psychological safety to perform better and take risks. That's a 133% return on her emergency fund in 1 year. And that compounds. Every year after, she's earning that extra $20,000. Over a decade, that's $200,000 in additional income she wouldn't have earned if she'd stayed in scarcity mode. But none of this happens until you cross the threshold. Here's the final thing nobody talks about. Once you hit 15,000, you can't stop. This isn't the finish line, it's the starting line. Because now you understand how the game works. You've proven to yourself you can save. You've experienced the benefits, and your brain wants more of that feeling. This is when you set the next target. 30,000, 50,000, a year of expenses. And each milestone makes you more powerful, more free, more strategic. You're not just building wealth, you're building immunity to the financial chaos that keeps most people trapped their entire lives. The $15,000 emergency fund isn't about emergencies. It's about crossing a psychological threshold that changes how your brain operates. From scarcity mode to strategic mode. From fear-based decisions to opportunity-based decisions. From being controlled by money to controlling money. And yes, it's hard to get there. The valley of death is real. The sacrifices are uncomfortable. The timeline feels impossibly long. But the alternative is spending your entire life in cognitive tunneling, constantly stressed, constantly reactive, constantly one emergency away from disaster. That's not living, that's surviving. So start today. Automate 500 or 300. Or whatever number feels painful but possible. Let it accumulate while you live your life. And in 30 months or 24 or 18 if you're aggressive, you'll wake up one day and realize something's different. The anxiety is gone. You check your account and see a 5-figure balance, and you understand finally what financial peace actually feels like. That's worth more than any raise, more than any luxury purchase. That's the number that changes everything, and you're closer to it than you think.